What's up, everybody? My name is BMaxMA, aka Brandon. This is episode 63 of the Anime Dojo. I'm alongside Chris this evening. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy. How about you?
Doing well, can't complain. We have a couple things to get in tonight. We're going to talk about Suicide Squad episode 4, give my little take on that. Plus, I'm going to be talking about the English dub for Suicide Squad as well. Kind of interesting with the English dub. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that, plus my thinking of what you should actually do for Suicide Squad if you want to get the most out of it. Then we're going to talk about something with Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll did something kind of weird with what they're going to be doing with their site. And one of them is actually kind of not surprising. I've seen it before with YouTube. The other is very surprising, which we'll kind of see where that ends up. Then we'll go through one of the big set of news, which is the second half. This is going to be the big talking point for the night, is everything coming out of Anime Expo. We had a lot of anime news coming out of Anime Expo. So many different announcements, so many things coming out that are, this year, later down the year, or things that are going to be just getting some more trailers and things. So we'll talk about that. We'll go through the first summer chart of the summer season, and we'll go through the episodes tonight. Shy episode 2, and then tonight we're going to be on High Dive doing Dungeon People episode 1. Something a little different because Dungeon People seems probably a different show that we wanted to do. Something out of the normal Crunchyroll realm. But first, let's get into this. Let me talk about Suicide Squad episode 4. Suicide Squad episode 4 can be summed up as this. There's a war going on in the country. Basically, the war is between the monsters and the Queen and her army. They enlist Harley Quinn, Deadshot, and all of them to figure out what they want to do with this group. The thing is, the Queen don't like Harley and all them, but the daughter does. The daughter respects them. The daughter seems like they're different, but they seem really nice and cool. Ultimately, the guy that's been the comic relief for the show, which is the knight that's living in the world already, kind of tries to keep vouching for them, but the Queen's not really having it. Queen forces him to help them finish off this job, to take out the army. And so they're preparing for this battle with this army of monsters who's controlled by the guy we saw earlier in this second episode, was the guy with the staff with the ruby on top. So we see this, they're taking their time, not really rushing into anything. Basically what happens, the guy that's the right hand to the princess kind of says, "Why are you not helping? What are y'all doing? I'm gonna have to do this myself." So he takes the whole army. They're about to go out there and fight this fight. Ultimately, what happens, Deadshot from a long distance away, I don't know how far he was from the battle, shoots a sniper and shoots out the red jewel from the guy that controls the monsters. Once that happens, the monsters are pretty much useless. They don't, in the sense that they're nice monsters. They're not, the jewel made them enraged. The jewel makes them enraged, makes them hostile. Well, then after that happens, one of the guys from the camp, that one of the knights that is under the commander from the princess, comes back to the camp, tells the commander they want to surrender. Okay, they're going to surrender. He's kind of surprised by that, and they're like, "How'd y'all do that?" And then we see a flashback of how Deadshot did this whole plan to make sure this worked out. So they knew what to do. They had a plan already, all this kind of stuff. Then basically the episode ends where they are free to do whatever they want now, since they helped the kingdom. But the Queen doesn't really like this, even though they won the war. They want the war to continue. Kind of a dichotomy. It's kind of a weird dichotomy. They want the war to continue and not having just peace. But the daughter was like, "We won the war. Everything's done." And the Queen, her mom, was just not having it. I like this episode. I will say it's interesting to me because I think the way they're going to tell the story is that the Suicide Squad is going to get wrapped up in all these different things with the Queen, and eventually we'll have to fight the Queen herself and get the princess to become the new Queen. I don't know if that's the case they want to go with, but I could see that being the case. Chris, 1, did you watch the episode? And 2, from that little synopsis I gave to our fans and everything, to people listening and watching on YouTube, what did you think from the show?
Okay, so so from the first 3 episodes of this show, it has been growing. Just like I said, I feel like they're trying to switch out of DC norms and go into more anime norms, but they're still trying to blend it. And
Mm-hmm.
I like how in that scene they kind of took what's the name of that character? Oh, between Harley and the princess. Harley didn't really
Yes,
like the princess at first because the princess kept staring at her, and honestly that would kind of freak me out too.
correct.
But at the same time, it was, how can I say it? It was, I mean, it was interesting to see how they made basically it was interesting to see how they or it's interesting to see how they're going to bring this about, because in every other show that I've seen, Harley usually has good instincts.
Yes, she does. Very much so.
So since she has those instincts, I'm wondering what they're telling her about the princess. Because if I'm being really, really honest,
Mm-hmm.
Harley kind of favors the princess, like as far as looks goes.
That is the big thing I noticed from this episode. Harley likes the princess because she's more like her in a sense. Not in the sense of like mannerisms, the way Harley acts, but more like in the fact that she's more understanding of people. She understands, even though these are not great people, they still have good hearts. They're not terrible. And I don't think the princess would want to hurt them unless they were just doing ultimately something super bad. That's the thing I'm getting at. And knowing her mom doesn't like them at all and just wants them there to do a job. But at the same time, they do the job so well that she's not happy.
That's what it looks like. They did it so well, and I mean, and they did it without any bloodshed from the heroes team
Yeah,
or
either
the
side,
hero.
basically. Yeah. I I'm gonna be interested in what they do for episode 5, because episode 5 is gonna be that point of like 5 and 6 are gonna be that point of like, okay, are you gonna switch the story to where the princess is gonna try to overthrow her mother, or is Harley gonna help the princess figure out why her mother's acting the way she is? Because the big thing about the mother I'm still gonna contend with, the mother's face, and they showed a close up again this time. Did you notice that she had the little corner of her mouth that had the red streaks on them?
Yes,
I'm still thinking that's either Joker's influence or somebody else's influence, but has Joker's kind of serum influence into her. Something's going on where she's not her normal self.
yes.
I don't know if they roll Joker into the story, how they're gonna roll Joker into the story, because Joker doesn't really naturally feel like he needs to be in the story.
And at this point, the only way Joker would fit is if he killed the queen.
Yes, yes. Joker kills the queen off of just being not accidentally killer, but like he does it on a random thing of like, oh, you're bad. Just kind of does it kind of nonchalantly. And everybody's like, why'd you just do that? We were trying to make pay, Then Harley gets pissed, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if they don't want to go down that route, because then why would you tell Harley? Why would you make Harley sympathetic to her, but also make Harley hate the Joker because she loves Joker so much in her
But that
character?
is the trope that's current now within, you know, that's the trope that's current now within DC, is that
True.
Harley is no longer attracted to the Joker.
Correct. That is the current trope in DC, so that is fair. Um, if I had to give this episode rating, I would have to give it like a 7.5. It was actually pretty decent. It wasn't too terrible. I think it's growing on me because I think they're, like Chris is saying, they're getting away from the DC tropes. If they get away from the full DC stuff, then this show will be pretty good across the board.
Yep.
What would you give episode 4 for a rating, Chris?
I'm going to give it a 6.4. Like, it
Okay.
was good, but I still need to see a little bit more anime style as far as anime stories go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I need to see how this story is going to progress.
Okay. Okay.
Because right now I'm kind of leaning towards how Dion normally is. Like the first 3 episodes, I really consider them just one episode. So this next episode can be a make it or break it for me.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason they did the first 3 episodes together like they had to, because if you did them separately, the context would be broken too easily because you don't understand. Oh, episode 1, it ends where we don't even see him go in the portal. Episode 2, they go in the portal, they get to do some things in the world, and that's done. Episode 3, they finally get to be in the world, but then they're still kind of not knowing about the princess and stuff. It's like it it would have felt disjointed. I see why they did all 3 back to back to back. But ultimately, if that's the case, I would have done a thing where you probably just the first 3 episodes as a full hour long thing and just let it be that way. That would
Yes.
have been me. That would have been me. But that's only on my estimations. I will say this. This is the thing I was going to talk about with Suicide Squad. So I watched the first episodes back because they put them out in English a couple days ago, right after they did the first 3. I will say the English is actually pretty okay. I can't tell if it's the original actors playing all the characters. The one I can tell the most that's not the person that's playing the character is Peacemaker. It's not John Cena. I don't think it's John Cena playing the original the Peacemaker variant as the voice. I don't know who plays the original voice, if any, in the animated series. Uh, but I also will say I think it's interesting. The English wasn't bad. I will say Harley and Deadshot are the most interesting in English. Even I think even Clayface is interesting. Those are the most interesting in English because I think they still fit their Japanese counterparts very well. Joker in English is kind of weird because I think they get the mannerism right for Joker in Japanese and in English, but I think the voice in English is more high, a little higher pitched, which I think that's the point, but it feels odd because the Japanese actor is lower pitch or like middle pitch. Um, to be totally honest, I would tell people if you're gonna watch this show, I would absolutely say keep it in Japanese.
Okay. Okay.
And I think the reason why I think it's more fun in Japanese. Going back to the point you brought up earlier with you want to see more isekai stuff, I think this show being in Japanese and about to go into more isekai tropes makes the show more interesting because the actors have more fun playing the characters. You can tell the person playing Harley in Japanese is having a lot of fun. You can tell the person who's
Yes.
playing Deadshot having a lot of fun. The guy who played Joker in Japanese, that first episode when he's just driving around the car and you can tell that the back and forth between him and Harley was amazing. And it just like it feels like they're not the Japanese actors aren't going to phone it in because they're going to play it really seriously. With the American actors, you know already the American voices who would naturally play these characters, and they're going to be more mellowed out because it's what they do naturally anyway. I don't know if I'm wrong on that. I feel like I'm off base, but that's my kind of take on it. Am I off base with that, Chris?
I don't think you're too off base. I mean, because that's pretty much how I was saying in the beginning. Like, as soon as you go into the English part of it, it seems more American than probably they intended to be.
Correct. And I think that's the one downside with Suicide Squad is that we have an American version of the Justice League of the Justice League show. We have an American version of Batman. We have an American version of Harley. It doesn't work out well because this was made in Japan with WB's help, but basically they just made the Japanese version, and then gone from there. Um,
Exactly.
I mean, if you want to keep watching English, I would say do it just to get the context of what they're saying. But I think the Japanese have more fun. I think Japanese is more fun. You can read the subtitles, you get the mannerisms. They kind of play out those mannerisms a little better. Because the one that really kind of gave me that sense, and it was a character I didn't expect it would, was the princess. The princess in English is kind of boring. only because you sound super generic. And that's not a knock on the person who's playing the princess. I think it's just sound super generic because you can have anybody play that princess and it would still sound pretty generic against everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it's like, even her assistant sounds pretty generic against everybody else because it's a knight. You can make anybody play a knight. That doesn't change the fact. But like I said, I'm gonna keep watching it. I'm looking forward to see what they do in episode 5. Technically, episode 5 is gonna probably be the linchpin where it's gonna be like, okay, can they do it this way or this way? And then we're only going 10 episodes, so really, there's not much left. Well, 10 episodes, they're gonna have to, if they're gonna finish out in one season, they're gonna have a lot of building, have to get to episode 5, do the climax, and get things rolling for the back half. Or if we're going to more season, they can keep building it up. We don't really know what the case will be, but that's kind of where we're sitting at right now. But let me know what y'all think in the comments of Suicide Squad, the anime. We'll be also getting back to my kind of talking about My Hero because that's coming back next week. I'm kind of interested to see what they're going to do because they literally took a week off, which is still kind of weird to me. We can get that. I'm not getting that can of worms because that's a can of worms I don't really want to touch. But I will say, I think My Hero taking a break is kind of a detriment to them because now you have all these shows that are more interesting now. Suicide Squad, Dungeon People, 2D, two dimension seduction. I parry everything. You have too much other good stuff where My Hero can't just come back lackluster. But okay. But let's get into this. So Crunchyroll, as of yesterday, disabled comments on all the videos and articles on their website. Plus, they started to use AI generation for some of their dubs. Most notably, they're doing AI localization, so like English translation for some of their shows. Most notably, the one me and Chris want to watch is the one about the deer girl. That's the first real one that's done it. I'm gonna ask you this, Chris. What do you think about the fact that Crunchyroll disabled comments from their videos and their articles, and the fact they're going to start using AI generation to do some of their subtitling for certain shows?
So first, I can see why they would turn off their comments because people are going to place their thoughts and ideas, and other people read it, and they all of a sudden have the same idea. It creates a lot of followers instead of people who just like to enjoy the anime for what it is.
Mm.
So that's what I think is a good idea by turning off the comments. I mean, because keep your opinions to yourself at that point. Now, as far as using AI to generate subtitles, I'm with it. I'm excited. But as long as it doesn't, it's the actual, as long as it's the actual words and the story, and they don't sugarcoat anything.
Okay. I agree with you on the first one. The first one, I agree with. The comment stuff was always kind of weird to me. Even YouTube started disabling comments for their videos, so I'm not surprised by it. YouTube did that long time ago. I think it was 6 months ago now. They started done that for certain. Or not. They didn't dislabel comments. They dislabeled the dislike button. So a lot of videos don't have the dislike button anymore, which makes sense. At the AI stuff is kind of interesting to me. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea if you're gonna do it. But the only other problem, it's taking away jobs of people who did do translations for these shows. On their actually. So I don't know if that's gonna kind of force people to find other things to do if you've done that before naturally. It is kind of weird. It's a gray area because I don't think it's gonna be terrible if you do AI do it. But like you say, you need to make sure AI can actually keep what the show's about within the generation of the subtitles.
Exactly.
If you start changing words and things, it kind of feels like you're messing with the actual function of the show. The only other thing I could see this doing, if they're doing it this way, this would actually help the fact that they can get English dubs out faster. Yes and no. Would that be a good thing? Maybe. Would that be a bad? Would that be something I would want?
Well, as far as English dubs, I mean, it's one thing for the English dubs. Now I'm thinking more of on the lines of like the subtitles and whatnot.
Well, and that's what they're going to use it for. But I'm also wondering if that's the case. If you're going to let AI do the subtitles, if that means the English doesn't come out faster based on the AI doing the subtitles for you.
I don't think so, because I mean I'm sure that it's probably just as easy for them to, translate the script. It's probably faster to have the computer translate a script than it is for them to do an entire, and in order for them, because I mean, once they get the script, they still have to find the actors and everything for it.
Correct. Yeah. That was the only thing I was kind of like, and I saw a video talk about this, and then when A Corner posted about it, the video I saw was talking about a couple bad apples who would write things into the subtitles that were not supposed to be there, or put their own spin on things, and it wasn't. And there were a couple bad apples within the subtitling world, which, if that eliminates that, then I see why they did it. But ultimately, it's also a thing of like translating for shows and games are so different nowadays, because, and a good example of that is something we just watched, and it's one show that I didn't expect to do it very well, but they did. The VTuber Legend. The translation for that is very interesting because you can tell they left it pretty to the point, and when they do the subtitles for it, but also they left in the words like she would be saying. So she says like one sentence she says basically is verbatim, and it's like, oh, she actually, that's kind of something you normally would have bleeped out completely. They don't, or she'll do it like she'll say other things and then they bleep them out depending on what they were. I wonder if it's gonna get kind of that weird gray area where if AI is going to generate subtitles, would you have to go back in and tell it, hey, censor this or bleep this out or do this, switch those type of things? And that's the only like thing I feel like, okay, then that by that point you could have a person do that a lot faster.
That's true.
I
I
don't
can see
know.
that.
It feels kind of weird because it's like if I know we have Chat GPT and we have all this other AI stuff anyway. I don't think it's like the biggest thing to do. Like, you can ask Chat GPT a question, it'll give you an answer. So it's like, I get why it's there. We have, but the funny thing is, back then we had Google, we had Ask Jeeves, and all these other things that did that, and it's just like, I feel like something's gonna mess with the system, and the system's gonna be like, nope, can't do it. See how that plays out, but ultimately, I think the other big thing this does is make people feel like. I think the thing this does, what makes it easier for people to like, okay, I don't have to look for translations. I don't have to feel, because I remember when people used to, I think people still do this now with manga. They will fan translate it to try to see what it's actually saying in Japanese, and it's hard to do because you have to translate the kanji and all that stuff. I think that'll make it easy for like fan translation for manga, or even in certain cases shows that don't have the subtitles yet for a certain country. If you could run it through a system to do it for you, and that country can get the translation somewhat, I think that's going to be good for all people involved. I don't know if that's what they're going to try to use it for, but I see that's one case thing they could do it for. Am I kind of on the point with that, Chris?
I think so. I mean, as many uses as it could have, that's definitely one of them, I think.
Because it's funny, a friend of mine who's still watching Demon Slayer, and he's going through it episode by episode because he wants to watch English. He was surprised that the only subtitles they had, or the only dub they had, was the Japanese dub for it, and then the French dub, I think, was the other dub. He's kind of shocked by that. Like, he's kind of shocked by that, but I think that would also do get away. He was surprised because he can't watch. He don't like reading subtitles, I'm assuming. But I think that's the other thing. It's like they could actually also work on the English dub a little bit quicker and don't feel like they have to be rushing, trying to get it out week by week instead of taking a month or two to wait to start the English dub. Once you get the actor and things, you could probably, the process will still be about the same, but it might speed up that process a little bit over time.
Yeah, I can see it.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I think the comic thing is not surprising. The comics thing has always been a thing that I've kind of always like. I never read the comments of any videos on Crunchyroll anyway, and even I never read the. I've never really read the comments from YouTube either. I don't know if you do for much YouTube, if you watch YouTube, Chris, because like they're usually kind of not great. They're kind of over the place, and they're usually kind of weird. So I'm like, eh. That was one thing about Crunchyroll too. The Crunchyroll comment in the star rating thing was not really fair because you can review bomb a show if you don't like it, so it didn't really matter.
Right, like, and I saw this in some episodes of some comments. People were just trash talking anime, and that people were legitimately enjoying.
Correct. So that's the reason they did it. I it's gonna be a slippery slope for them because I think Crunchyroll's in that hot water phase now. They're not boiling. They're not like the water's not boiling. It's slightly boiling. And the reason I say that, and I don't know if you agree with this, Chris. Think about this. And we kind of talked about before the podcast, so this is kind of where this is going to come from. Look at the shows that are coming on Crunchyroll. Look at the shows that are coming on High Dive, Hulu. You can go a couple, but Crunchyroll and High Dive are the comparisons. So like 2.5D seduction is basically playing off what what's the one we're watching? I can't always say the title name wrong.
I don't know the name wrong.
Pastel. Let's say that one. The one about the girl in the theater club. That one.
Oh, Pseudo Hero.
Pseudo Harem. That's basically a nicer version of Pseudo Harem. I pair everything. Is a more interesting version of the guy that can't use magic, and he's basically just a strong guy, like really strong dude.
The Onsen Newbie Adventurer.
Correct, that one. But also you have things like you have certain things that's also been there too. Like we've gone through. What was one? Oh, we watched one that was like something else, but it's like if Dungeon People is some other version like Dungeon People, what Dungeon People's doing. It's actually kind of interesting. Like I don't know. I think Crunchyroll's kind of worried because I think they know High Dive's going to be kind of coming at their heels a little bit because they have a lot of stuff that people want to watch, and Crunchyroll doesn't really have a lot that people do want to watch. There's stuff there. I'm not saying that, but I think if you're looking for the more adult content and more fun things, more interesting storytelling, I think that High Dive is your place for that. Which is even more insane to think about because High Dive was kind of bad prior.
I mean, but I agree with that statement though, because I mean, even though Crunchyroll has put on certain titles that are more adult than others, High Dive still has more. When I say this, I'm saying this with all due caution. They still have a lot of more intriguing animes with stories. Not
Correct.
saying that Crunchyroll doesn't, but it's the fact that they're more open with it.
Yes, so much so. Like, I think I'm gonna say this was like VTuber Legend is a. I don't. VTuber Legend is supposed to be what they're doing with 2.5T seduction, but 2.5T seduction is using cosplay in that sense, and they're both using the thing that's actually been around the world for a while. But I think 2.5D is doing a lot better. Wands and swords. Oh, that's one I can give you basically that's for. That's a better version, and it's actually with itself, with Crunchyroll, is better than MASH. It's a better version of MASH. And Dion mentioned that when we talked about it over text when we were watching it. It's a second attempt at MASH. if MASH was actually decent. There's some things here I'm kind of slightly seeing what they're gonna do next with. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do next because High Dive's gotten better and Crunchyroll's kind of taking back a little bit on certain things feature wise. But the comic stuff is not a feature. I don't think everybody used to kind of mash things.
But though, I wonder. So you know how this season or last season they had Kaiju 8 coming out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like since Sony is putting their money into Demon Slayer, we could see those episodes of Demon Slayer and movies come out on Crunchyroll.
So you would see them day and date with their theater release.
Yep. Or at least a week or two after.
That would be. That would be interesting if they did them that way. Either day or date a couple weeks. I think the couple weeks after make more sense if they tried to.
But
even then,
it would be like how lucky would they be if like they let it play in movies for like 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks it's on Crunchyroll, and they just don't say anything.
So just basically shadow drop it. Shadow drop the Crunchyroll.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. I could absolutely see them shadow dropping it to Crunchyroll if they run it. So like the first movie comes out end of this year, early next. It shadow drops by the middle of sometime in the middle of January, end of January.
Something like that.
That would be interesting because then that would just give hype because people were like, "Oh, it's already out." Well, we didn't get no announcement. We didn't get nothing that can say it was gonna be. Yeah, that would give more
because they want to get their money in the movies. Yeah,
correct. I think it's the thing of that Crunchyroll's now has a legitimate competition against other streaming sites, and this is the first time I think Crunchyroll's had that legitimate fight against other streaming sites because they've been the top for so long, and they're still the top in certain things. But I think you are gonna make people kind of think about, okay, do I want to go to High Dive? Do I want to go to Hulu? Hulu has a lot of anime, as we've seen, and they have a lot of Hulu has a lot of original stuff too. Netflix has a lot of original stuff. It feels
Disney's
like
coming out with their
original stuff. I think what Crunchyroll's trying to figure out: do we want to make original stuff for ourselves, or do we want to try something else? We don't know. They don't know yet. I think that's the thing Crunchyroll's trying to figure out. Because for them, I think trying to make something original doesn't really help them outside of helping. I think
maybe not, but we have seen Crunchyroll buy other animes from their competitors.
Correct,
Netflix being one of them.
Correct. I mean, they literally pushed Kaiju 8 to a point where you couldn't escape the fact that Kaiju 8 was coming out every Saturday in the past season because they did a timer for it. You couldn't escape the fact that they were helping with soul leveling to a point. Like, I think that's the thing that I'm looking at now, just seeing in the landscape, is the fact that I think we're probably in the most dense season for anime, but in the sense that there's a lot out there. But also, I think this is also one of the times where you can go to multiple different sites and find what you're actually looking for as well.
Yeah, correct.
Which is even more kind of funny. Let me know what y'all think in the comments for that. But let's get into the debate topic for the night before we get into the episodes. We're gonna start off with Shy tonight, and then we'll go into Dungeon People. So there was so much anime news out of AX. Ultimately, I'll give you a few of them because there was like I think 7 or 8 I saw. I end up seeing Chris in the group. Basically, we had Black Butler getting a new arc for 2025. We
Woot woot.
got Dr. Stone getting a new arc for later on in
Woot woot.
season 4 coming to Crunchyroll. They didn't give a date for that.
Yeah.
We're also getting Fire Force season 3.
Heck yes.
And this is the one that kind of bugs me. So we're getting the My Hero movie, Your Next. We already knew the title. We knew the title of it coming to American theaters in October, which ultimately means season 7 will be done by that point.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if season 7 is going to be the last season then, because there's still a lot we don't know. That's going to be so interesting.
I don't think season 7 is going to be the last season.
I don't think so either.
I think they're going to break it up in 2 parts.
Okay. That's what I kind of figured. So we're going to get 2 sets of 24, or do you think we're going to get 1 set of 24 and 1 set of 21 and the other set of like 20?
I think we'll get a set of 24 this up and maybe like a set of 8 in the next season.
Okay. Shangri-La season 2 scheduled for October 13th. That's one me and Chris are interested in. We're also getting what was the other thing I saw on here? There's a couple different ones. Oh, Sword Art Online Alternative Gun Gals Online season 2 scheduled for October 2024. That's a insane one. And then the one you, me, and Chris were happy to see. Solo Leveling season 2 was announced by A1 Pictures, coming to Crunchyroll soon, and they also put out a trailer for it. I'm gonna ask you this first. Out of everything we got announced, what is your biggest takeaway from that list?
Fire Force is finally going to finish. Oh my goodness, bro. We've been waiting for season 3 of Fire Force for what? At least in between 3 and 5 years, bro.
Oh wow. Was Fire Force season 2 a couple years ago? Or has it been
It
more
was
than
more
that?
than a few years ago. I think so. I think it was like maybe 2020, I think.
Oh wow.
You know what? Let me just look on the internet real quick.
Yeah, look, I think that if that's the case, it's been since right before COVID, right during COVID, basically, was the last time we saw Fire. That's interesting. That was an interesting one I saw. I was like, that kind of interesting.
Yep, season 2 is 2019.
Oh wow. So it's almost been 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that you said that will finish off the story of Fire Force.
Yep, season 3 is supposed to end it.
Okay. What do you think about Dr. Stone? Because Dr. Stone getting season 4, does that mean that series ain't technically over yet?
Bro, Dr. Stone is one of my favorite science-based animes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see them possibly getting a season 4, depending on what they do with season 3. Because season 3 isn't technically done yet. It's the second cour of season 3.
Oh, so it's a split core of season. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is weird. They're doing a split core for that, which they could have kept running, couldn't they? They could have technically kept running if they wanted to.
No, but they've done 2 cores even for season 1.
Oh, okay.
And season 2, matter of fact, yeah.
So they're not one to like. They're not going to be one to go. We're going to keep just running this through because we want to. We're just going to take our time. Take our time.
Yeah, I haven't seen them do it, or I haven't remembered them doing that before.
Okay. The other one I want to ask you about, because you're, like I said, they're more, him and D are more anime experts for some of these. The ones I'm going to talk about, the ones that we've seen all together. What do you think about Sword Art Online coming back? Because it seems kind of weird.
But it's coming back as Gun Gale, though, right?
Yeah, so is Gun Gale alternate series to the original Sword Art Online, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, that's the thing I couldn't be confused. I was confused about because I'm like, so the original Sword Art Online, the Sword Art Online is done, but this Gun Gale is just a continuation, like a spinoff of that season.
Yeah, see, Gun Gale had a spinoff, I think, after the original Sword Art Online finished.
Mm-hmm.
and I not and see now this other part of Sword Art Online I actually liked, and I hope
Mm,
that I do hope they can do finish that with a season 3.
okay. Okay. So you would be okay with them doing? So you like the Sword Art Online alternate gun gal online season
Well,
2?
I
You
only
like this?
I had so I remember in like the second season of Sword Art
Mhm.
where before they did the spinoff, you know, they did like he played a game where it was like ones and swords. I mean guns and swords, and that gave the spinoff to Gun Gale. And they even used some of the villains from the original story, which makes it even more interesting. So Gun
Okay.
Gale is take away all your swords, if I remember correctly, and it's a gun-based first-person shooter type thing.
Ooh. Okay. All right. All right.
So,
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
well, basically, for it to be getting the season 2 is actually pretty. I would pat them on the back for that. And if it's good, I'll give them a round of applause.
Okay.
But I still want the last season of Sword Art, please,
Okay. So you want the last season of the original series?
because you can tell they were bringing it back around for the season 3
Okay.
to possibly end the series.
Okay. Okay. Um, and the other one I want to ask you about, because I think this is the one I think me and you are both kind of interested in a little bit. What do you think they're gonna do with that movie for My Hero? Do you think the My Hero movie is actually gonna do well in theaters?
Well, it did
Because
well in Japan.
okay, it did do well. That's the good indication if it's done well in Japan.
Hmm.
Um, I'm wondering then where is it set? Where does it take place? Because
I
it's
think it takes
before.
place in another city, like it does in the other movies.
Okay, and the other thing I was gonna say, did it take place after all this happened or before? We think it's before,
Mm.
and that's the big thing. Where's the time frame for this? If it's like between 4 and 5, season 4 and 5, season 6 and 7, we don't really get that indication yet. And that's the thing that kind of boggled my mind with this. I'm like, I we knew about the movie so far in advance. Like this was something we kind of already had a hunch about. I'm just wondering where they're gonna put it in the timeline.
That is a good question.
So based on the article here from Anime TV, with American theaters, October 11th, 2024, the film is set to center on the symbol of peace, which I'm assuming that's going to be All Might.
Yes.
My Hero Your Next movie will release in Japan August 2nd. The official website describes the movie as the following: inside devoid of by the effects of such an all-out war, a massive giant fortress suddenly appears, swallowing up the town and people after another, and in front of Deku and the others, a man who looks like the symbol of peace stands in front of them. So this kind of like, based on that, that sounds like a prequel.
But you can't have a prequel in My Hero because
No.
Deku doesn't get his powers until the fifth or seventh episode.
But it says after the all-out war with um All Might, or not All Might, after the all-out war with All for One. So if that's the case, it's going to be the end of the series. But the way they're talking, it kind of like continues where season 7 is left going to leave off, which is kind of a weird tease if that's the case. But um But I'm not surprised that's the case. If that's the case, I'm going to be a little bit surprised. If that's not the case, I'm okay with it. I just don't know where you want to take that story. Like I'm intrigued either way. I'm just gonna wonder if people in America actually enjoy that story if they tell it like that. We'll see. The things that are big for me personally, Shangri-La coming back, that was gonna get a second season handily. The fact of the matter is, also the one I thought was gonna get one pretty handily was let's see. I thought for me, Dr. Stone was one I thought that was gonna get one pretty handily. I'm actually surprised Black Butler's getting another season. That's confirmed. Then the one I think I'm gonna chip this for Dion. Soul Leveling getting that announcement basically guarantees we're getting it sometime by the end of this year.
I would hope so.
Or ultimately, I need it by the end of this year. If you could please do that, you can't wait around for that. But
I feel like it might come out in the beginning of the spring season again, or the fall. I mean, the winter season, like it did.
Oh, okay. But see, if they do that, the only downside with that I don't want to see, because we also got the MASH announcement like a couple weeks ago. You do not need to put MASH and this right next to each other.
Please don't.
Because ultimately, last time, MASH got eaten alive by Soul Leveling, but also got eaten, like I say, everything else. Everything else just that it got destroyed by everything else that season because it didn't do well. I'm wondering if Crunchyroll is gonna pay them the money again to make Soul Leveling so good and just keep MASH around just to make them money. But we really don't know if MASH makes them money. I could be solely wrong if MASH actually makes them any kind of money.
Well, if they put out another song like they did, it will.
But see, that's the only thing about that show that actually did well. And I have to agree with you on this one. This is the one time I actually agree with you on that too. The song is the only thing that kept that show alive for so long.
Because because look, I like MASH the first season. The first season was dope.
We both do.
But the second season, we don't know what happened. Y'all dropped the ball on that so far.
Unless the second season, like you say, is written like that in the manga, which would be so odd if it is. If it's written like that in the manga, then it's like, what happened between the first and second season?
Exactly.
Like, I hope Soul Leveling is on its own when it comes back, because then you're giving Soul Leveling the hype. And ultimately, the one thing that helped Soul Leveling was ultimately this. The fact of the matter is, you had the Igris fight in episode 10, 11, 12. Or 10 and 11. And that really kicked people off. You had people go, okay, I need to follow this. Even though it's for a fight, the fight kept people going. And the story was actually really well done. I think if you keep the story pacing up, the story pacing for Soul Leveling, and then the fights you can add into that. Because I haven't read the second book yet. Nowhere near reading it yet. I'm going to read it pretty soon. But on just listening through Spotify, you can find all the books on Spotify if you really want to listen to them. I'll be interested to see how they're going to adapt to the second book, because the second book is basically him growing. If I remember correctly, this next season is like him's going to grow really strong. We get to see more of our main lady. We get to see a lot of that kind of stuff come to play. So what they're going to do with that to make it feel like, make it really hit home for a lot of people. In a sense, like you can't, people just want the action, but this next section is all going to be story stuff, I assume, based on the trailer. I will say this Anime Expo is the one of the few times where I'm like, I kind of followed through Otaku News, and I have to give Otaku News credit. Otaku News, it's actually it's one guy, by the way, which I did. He did talk about that when he put out the Instagram post about it. And the website, he does all that stuff himself, but he's like, he posted almost every day coming out of Anime Expo about all the news that came out, and it was a lot. And I think this is probably one of the few times where Anime Expo really gave us a bunch of news. This is probably one of the first times I've really followed, like, oh, y'all are dropping people. They're dropping things left and right. I'm going to ask you this because we saw the Shonen Jump Expo. They did the winter one, I think, about a month ago or a couple months ago. Is Anime Expo the new version of like the summer, like a summer expo for them, where they can announce a bunch of stuff at Expo?
Yes, bro. Okay, I don't think it's just Anime Expo, but I think like any convention of anime that has over a certain that masses a certain number of people every year is going to get special announcements. Because I mean, because even if you look at Anime Maseri, they're having a whole anime preview.
Yeah, we're seeing the first two episodes of that new anime that's supposed to come out in October, which we're
Yeah.
going
So
to.
with that being said, it's like I think as long as the convention has high attendance, they're going to get some kind of special announcement at that convention.
Well, it's interesting too because this was multiple studios talking. Because Demon Slayer was out there, and they didn't really need to be out there. They were just like a special anniversary thing for Demon Slayer, and they were like, "What? They're out there? That's kind of odd." Season 8 just had ended, or the Hostel Trainer arc had just ended, and it was just like, "What they gonna announce out there? They're not. Oh, they're showing a special thing, just a special anniversary thing. That was it." Like, okay. But I'm like, you could have. I wonder if you kind of teased the movies or talked about them, which could have happened. We don't know. Um, it's interesting because I think, like you say, if the con gets enough of a fault, like enough people to go out there, like that's where you can see a lot of those announcements.
Exactly.
But I'm also kind of interested if that's going to be the baseline to see if they can do new announcements, because that's a weird baseline if you do that.
But I mean, they're all about hitting those weird baselines because I mean, anime reaches different genres and different people. So
Yeah, it does. It does. It just kind of funny because I think we're getting to that point now where uh I think the thing with that is going to be when is it too much when you announce everything in one place? Because I think it gets kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, bloated a little bit, but it's not overly bloated. It can be bloated to a point. Um, I, I don't know. It was interesting. Like I think this is the first time I'm just like, oh, this was probably the first time we've gotten so many announcements, and I'm like, okay.
well, I
Uh,
mean, even with all these announcements, we know that at least we know that they're putting out some new animes. Because I mean, they put out next to nothing on the summer list, and look how it's turning out. I mean, there's some good
that,
sleepers, but I
that,
mean, the majority of these are kind of a snooze fest.
that's the other thing that kind of boggles my mind with this. And that's the thing I was going to bring up is the fact that, think about the fact that we we we're summer season wasn't there really wasn't much announcement for summer season, and yet, like you say, there's good sleepers in summer season. I'll give an example of that for me, Nier Automata. I know of Nier Automata from the game. I think it's really interesting. I've watched the first 6 episodes pretty much in one sitting. I'm about to finish it. I'll probably finish it in the next couple days. But at the same time, for that, I think that's one of those like ones, slime sticking around. We know that My Hero's sticking around. Outside some of the bigger ones, Shy is kind of a sleeper thing, because I know when Shy was in the first season, Shy's first season didn't get a lot of praise, which it should have. I think the VTuber one is gonna get kind of weird looks, but I think it'll do well enough. Failure frame, I think is gonna be one that's gonna be really interesting. But at the same time, that's the thing of marketing. Market these shows so people can go see and watch them. Why aren't you? You could do that pretty easily and not have a problem. But yet you don't. You skip summer and we're going straight to fall now. We're literally talking about fall season for October with like no real like, oh, we're just gonna be here. It kind of it doesn't hurt my heart, but it kind of feels weird when it's like you legitimately just skip summer like nothing, and then when spring and fall are your big times, winter's kind of just there, but winter's better than summer in the sense because winter at least has some things.
I just don't like having a slow summer season. That's all.
I don't think this one's actually that slow in a sense, but a lot of stuff came out early June. We're getting some stuff still this week and next week, but then like your other big hitters like not Tomb Raider. What I'm thinking of? Oh, Terminator, end of August. Something else is the end of August. That's kind of interesting. So it's not like you're getting some of those too. We'll see. I think with the announcement of AX, I think AX is going to be your new hub, like E3 used to be for games. We watched E3, by the way. Me and Chris watched the Xbox showcase. E3 used to be the thing where all the gaming companies come together, do E3. Well, that's not a thing anymore because E3 kind of was not great. So each company does it on their own. Xbox had a pretty decent show when they did their thing because they were on their own. They could do their thing. They could do whatever they need to make it interesting. I think AX is going to be that for a lot of people where you're going to hear all these announcements come out of AX because you have all these creators and all these studios and publishers and everything come out there and try to push their shows. But if that's the case, I think the other thing you need to do is ultimately, if you're going to do that, make it more of a thing. And now stuff in October. Give us stuff in January. Maybe go out even further than that and try to give us something in the in that fall or that after fall winter season 2, just to give us more variety and maybe talk about your summer stuff. If summer stuff's out at the time when you go to X, talk about that, talk it up, because at least you can talk it up with fans already there. That's just my thing. I don't know if I'm off, too off base, but I think that's why AX is getting so big, because AX is still averaging. I think they average almost 100,000 people in the full weekend or something like that. It's high. It's a pretty high number. So one of the largest anime conventions in the world. So we'll see. But let me know what y'all think in the comments about these announcements we're getting. These announcements are actually kind of interesting. We're getting a lot of stuff. I think we know the fall and winter are going to be safely in hand. We know some of these bigger shows are going to be fine, so we're good with that. Before we get to, we're about to get in charts, but get up, Shy episode 14. We're about to talk about these anime charts for the first week of the anime season. So we'll start out with this. Something hiding under, or something hides her feelings. Oh, the girl that hides her feelings in Russian. I need to watch that. That's 1. Oshinoko at 2. Days with My Sister is at 3. Suicide Squad's at 4. Pastel Harem's at 5. The Time I Got Reincarnated Slime is at 6. Oshi's Newbie Adventurer is at 7. The strongest mage in the Demon Lord's army was a human, is at 8. Spice and Wolf's at 9. And Mission Yokohama Family is at 10. Chris, what do you think about this first set of charts?
I'm really surprised. Well, I shouldn't be surprised to see the number 1 spot is Hide Her Feelings in Russian. I mean, I like the show, but since it was only the first episode and it's at the number 1, I feel like people may like it for the wrong reasons.
Okay, explain those wrong reasons because I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to, but I also was kind of curious.
They have one scene that's a little suspect, I should say, but I mean
Oh, okay.
it does run well with the show in itself. But to me, it's they're trying to turn a person's red flag into a flirty thing. Does that make sense?
Oh, when they talk about people having like red flags, why you shouldn't like date them or something. Yeah,
Mm,
I get where you're going with that.
like, yeah.
That's an interesting thing if you even do that. Like, how are you gonna do that right though? Because that's a thing that's not been.
Well, at this point, I just have to tell you to watch it.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised Oshinoko is not on the top of the list anyway, because I think the first season people love of Oshinoko was like really good. I think it's also it takes a bit to get in Oshinoko because the first season's so rough storytelling wise. But also, I don't know what they're gonna do next. Like, I really don't. I um I I don't know what they're gonna do with the rest of this season two for Ocean Co. Because Ocean Co has a weird. I think the story is about a um, singer, and it's like the singer has some emotional things to her. That's what the first season was about. Um, but we'll see how that all plays out. Um, ultimately, the rest of this list doesn't surprise me for the most part. Suicide Squad being at 4, that's where I kind of expected it. The Harem one, 5, that's good. Slime staying where it's at 6 makes sense. I think the newbie adventure being at 7, I was kind of interested by that 7, but I can see why. I think the strongest magic user in the Demon Lord's army should be higher. Um, but that's just me. Uh, Bison Wolf staying where it is makes sense. I forgot that did Michelle Khan family last episode was last week, right? So would have been on this chart.
No, I think it should have been on that chart, yeah. But I think it's continuing too.
Oh, it is. Okay, I remember that. I think I remember it was only 13 episodes on that chart, but I could be wrong on that listing for it. But no worries. Um, yeah, I mean, ultimately, this chart doesn't surprise me by no means. Um, but if you look at the full chart, I will say it's kind of interesting because you see like my wife has no emotions at 11, Shy at 12. Actually, Shy's higher than it originally was in the first season, which is kind of funny. Um, Code Geass is at 13. Dead Demon is at 14. The Cafe Terrace is at 15. Senpai is an Otaku is at 16. Uh, Fatal Frame is Failure Frame is at 17. And then One Piece is at 19. And then Toshio is at 18. And then there's only 23 on this list right now. So the Ravens at 20. Uh, Twilight Out of Focus at 21. I Parry Everything's at 22. And Ramen Ake is at 23. I'm surprised I Parry Everything is so low, but that's also kind of weird. But I think that's just because it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, yeah. Again, certain things are reaching certain people. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I ultimately once we get more to this list, we'll see how it all pans out. I think Shy will hit the top 10 after maybe episode 3. It just depends how things go. Um, but also, outside of that, there's nothing really else that jumps up to me that well, like that easily. That I get there's a clear like top 10. The only clear thing is it should be in the top 3. Ocean and Co should be in the top 3. I think Slime should be in the top or top 10, or Slime should be in the top 10. I think Mission Yokohama family should probably not Mission. The strongest magic users and Demon Lord Darmy was a human. I think it should also be in the top 10. But those are the only ones I could see like legitimately being in the top 10. The rest of them are kind of like, could see it, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. There it is.
We'll see how much this chart changes over the next couple weeks. The next couple weeks are gonna really tell you something. And obviously, I think the other reason why I think Suicide Squad's up so high as well, we get the first 3 episodes. If we didn't get that, that would be a lot lower as well.
I agree with that.
But we'll see where like I said, where this starts going. It's gonna be more fun to see where it goes in, like you say, week 4, 5, where it kind of starts solidifying, because that usually gives you indication, oh, this is what people actually are watching for the most part. But let's get into Shy episode 14. Like I said, we're starting with Shy first, then we'll do Dungeon People. This episode for Shy is kind of, how can I put this? Odd? Weird? I don't know. Like, I like, I think Shy season 1 is kind of like Mass season 1 for both of us. Shy season 1's really good after a certain point, and we loved it. But now this first episode kind of giving us vibes of like, or second episode giving us like, where do y'all want to go? And what is your hope? Where would your hope to go? But in a second, I will say 3, 2, 1, and then we go. And Chris, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. In 3, 2, 1, go. I want to give him credit. This opening is actually really good.
Yeah, I give it that. It's well animated too.
Did you notice what they're doing? They're going with that Dead Mount Death Play imagery.
Yeah.
They're going with that creepy imagery. So I'm wondering if that's why what we're about to see in this episode it's kind of that weird, but it's a weird for a reason. It's there's a reason for that weird.
It does take on another scene. I will give it that.
Mm-hmm. It's raining and I forgot my umbrella. How do you forget an umbrella when it's raining? Oh, he's asleep.
He was knocked out.
Well, when I heard this, we watched this the first time, like just watching it, just see what it's about. I didn't know he was asleep. We didn't. I was like, is he asleep? But you can hear the noise now very well. I'm like, oh.
Okay, yeah. Brother was knocked out.
But it's funny, like one thing about it's interesting, like over there they stay in school and study and stuff. Like for us, if we were out of school, we just leave. It's kind of like that's the weird thing about that
But not unless you were in an after school program.
program. But yeah, outside of that, most people wouldn't just stay and just study.
Well, not only that, but they're like there that most of the students are in walking distance from their houses.
Correct. They are.
And
Unlike
even if
us,
they
we're
were, they're a short distance. It's a short bus or train route. You know.
correct. Unlike us, where you could do that nowadays if you live close enough, but most schools you don't live close. You don't live that close to us. School.
I mean, when you look at it this way, Brandon, in America, students are still getting shot at.
Yeah.
While Japan is considered one of the safest countries in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I love the fact she just moved over to that other seat so fast without her knowing.
Yeah, like you need to sit far away from me.
Like she literally goes, and she's already across the table from her. Don't even try. See, this is where the creep factor kind of got into this because, like, oh, she's scared. She's scared of thunder.
The person who talks all creepy and everything is scared of
It's
thunder.
it's scared of thunder. That is also kind of weird. And she's wearing an eye patch. Yeah, that doesn't really feel right.
Well, she could have pink eye or something. I don't know.
That is true. That is very true. And then you tell this creepy story.
Was she just describing creepy things she see on the school?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the problem. You're creepy. Yeah, you're trying to creepy things on school. Why are you doing that? Oh, that book of blood didn't come back to haunt you. Wait, why would she want to go look for the book of blood with her? Chris, if it was my daughter talking to me like that, I would have stopped, make him stop talking. I do not want to hear the rest of this. Oh, I get why they're showing this off this part. I get it now. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah.
I get why they're showing off this part too, as it actually does something for the second half of this episode.
Oh,
This part was actually kind of cute.
but we did something like that in my high school.
Did we ever do anything like that in mine? I think there is. If I'm correct, I think is something in where I went to high school that had a similar vibe, but I wasn't. I don't think it was. I don't think it was in a library, but it was a similar vibe to that where you could find that.
For us, it was the underground part of the school. You would sign your name on one of the pillars.
Mm-hmm. Something like that. Yeah. And she gone. Yeah, this part would be like, wait, was I just talking to somebody?
Nope.
Where'd they go? Where'd they go?
The disappearing girl, remember? The disappearing
Yeah.
girl?
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what you know what she reminds me of? And this is
What?
kind of a weird thing I'm gonna say. Myrtle, Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's actually kind of spot on.
Has that weird vibe of like she was stuck in the school for so long after she disappeared, her spirit just rested there until somebody could make it rest. And once finally somebody made it rest, it passed on officially.
Exactly.
That's what they're kind of telling them. And see, that's promise. She's actually real, so it doesn't really play right. Is that a convenience store also like a cafe?
Probably.
Okay, interesting.
We'll we'll find out for sure.
See, that's a telltale line. She says, "I experienced so many first."
Hmm.
Why would you say that? So that means you've never been to a store before.
But this is an entirely different girl, though.
That's the one. This is
So
the one from the train. Yeah, this is from the train. And she technically wanted to meet Shy, by the way.
yep.
By the
Who
way,
doesn't
also
know
you
what
can
karaoke is?
correct in the way it's spelled in the translation. She said it like it was with the C, not the K. Some because the AI name was kind of weird. It's like AI something. I was like, oh, so you really are kind of. By the way, how do you jump to conclusions? That's the conclusion you jump to.
Because rich people have no concept of lower things of entertainment.
That is fair, but also, fair enough. Fair enough. I was gonna say, but this one doesn't even give you that. It gives you more vibes like she lives in a place where they don't have that kind of stuff either. So it's kind of
I know plenty of friends that don't know what a kickback is because they're so used to parties and then there's galas. So
mm,
something other than a party or a gala is like, huh, what's a kickback?
I like this little montage. It's so cute.
One of the things I'm really excited about for Japan, bro, is the fact that their cities and stuff are so safe that people you can literally walk around the street and
Oh
find
yeah,
somebody by themselves and really and truly not know. You could be talking to a 50-year-old or a 13-year-old and you wouldn't know.
correct. She's trying to figure. Do I want to transform here? By the way, this makes kind of no. This makes slightly no sense. How is a girl with a wooden sword beating a thief with a knife?
Judo, my friend, judo.
Fair enough. Fair enough on that point. But
As many fighting styles as they have in Japan, I'm not surprised.
you know. Okay, there we go. I started self defense. Yep. There we go. I love the fact she lied so easily, and you could tell it was a lie so easily.
Why did she get into this? See, I never left my village before, and then you start talking with this country accent.
Yep. Well, she's trying to blend in so that the person who was trying to catch her is not going to catch her, which is even more funny because the person who's going to catch her, we're about to see. So it's not even more. It's like okay, what they were trying to tell.
Now the ninja guy makes a little bit more sense.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, that was shot episode 14. Winds come from the west. Wind coming from the west. I'm gonna break this up in two parts because it'll make this simple for y'all. The first half of this is basically all dealing with the girl from the school, the girl we thought that was a ghost, and Shy helping the girl find the book of the blood. Shy was about to leave school, but it's pouring rain. The fact of the matter is, she's like, I can't leave. He tries to call the shrimp dude. Shrimp dude's hard asleep, like knocked out, like Chris said. And she's like, okay, I can go study. I'll go sit in the library and study. She does. And this girl's kind of creepy. She kind of starts talking weird. She kind of they say these creepy things. She asked Shy to help her find this book. Shy says, you know what? I'll help you find it. You like ghost stuff and we'll appreciate it. And so they go searching around, find this book. They find the Book of Blood. Basically, this book is about the fact that this class set this book here every year, and every class has used this book, or this class has put this book every year to say about can find it, talking about their um, history and things and what they've done at the school and everything. And then they're about to walk out of school because the sun comes up, the rain comes up, rain goes away. Her friend from the first season comes out and goes, "Oh, you finished your club? Wait, Shy, weren't you studying?" I was like, "Yeah, but I was also talking to some." And the girl just leaves, gone. We thought she was a ghost. Ultimately, next day, we see the girl again. She is still there, and she's like, "Oh, the literary club got merged to the newspaper club." That's the first part of this. Chris, what do you think about the first half of the show?
The first half of this, bro, was pretty interesting. Like, I like the idea of one of these new characters that they introduced, who's into scary stories, but is scared of thunder and loud noises, pretty much, which is understandable. But the fact that you're looking for the so-called bloody book in the library, okay, that seemed kind of ominous. And I mean, but the fact that Shy did look with her to help her find it, I mean, and it just turns out it's just one of those senior traditions, which is something that's really cool, actually. So, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
The story still was kind of lackluster and boring. I mean, yay, she got the ladder and saved the day. Woo, okay. So, but overall, this first half was an interesting story. I can't say if it was um had any energy to it.
Okay. Okay. Um, I will say, I will say this for the second part. I think the two are supposed to connect. There's a connecting thread to both of them, and I'll give you a reason why. There's a connecting thread to both of them. But for the second half, basically, the next day, she meets the girl from the library, tells her about the stuff. Then after school that day, her best friend, her friend, and Shy are at this convenience store, kind of drinking coffee, kind of hanging out, talking. They're about to throw the trash away and leave, but this girl kind of runs into this counter, which knocks off all these things off the counter or the shelving. They help the girl pick the shelving up. Um, she said, "This is my first time in the city." They kind of get to talking to her. She's, they help her get to the train station. And she's like, I don't know what karaoke is, but she says karaoke, but it's spelled wrong in the like little subtitles, which is kind of cool. And she's like, "What is a game thing?" And she doesn't know what that is, so it's like, um, so she kind of spells it wrong, says it again wrong, and they're confused because they're like, uh, how she was confused, like, what are these things? And the girl that's Shad's friends, like, you must be a rich girl. You must not know what these things are. Kind of starts asking all these questions. Ultimately, what we figure out that this girl is somewhat different. So they kind of walk around with her, hang out with her for a bit. They're walking down the street. Next thing you know, they see the girl, this lady, get her purse snatched by this thief. Shad's like, "Do I need to help him? I need to transform. I need to help him. I need to transform." And then AI pretty much says, "Oh, I got this. Don't do anything." So she literally takes out her bag, this like wooden sword, and just like knocks the knife out of the dude's hand, knocks him over, and then gets the bag and falls on top of him. And they're like, "How did you do that?" I take self defense training. I study in self defense, but I get winded pretty quickly from doing it. They're like, "Do you need to go to the hospital?" I was like, "No, no, no, I'm fine." Um, they keep walking, and they're like, "So you weren't?" "No, I wasn't scared." And he was like, "I can tell them to. I can trust them." So my family. So I've been lying to you. Partially, I'm not on vacation. I'm basically I ran away from my family, and they're like, "Why? Wait, you ran away from family? Why you don't call the police? Why you don't do this and that? The police would just take you back to my family, all this kind of stuff. They ultimately figure out, and they said, she asked, can I stay with y'all? And she's like, yeah, we can stay with y'all. We don't mind. We ultimately figure out, she's like, I can trust them. So she tells them that she's a shinobi. My family is part of the shinobi, which is a line of like ninjas, basically. And they're like, shinobi? You gotta be kidding. You're just joking, right? And literally, this guy comes out of the air saying her name and she goes, Taki, what are you doing here? And he's like, where have you been? And they're like, ninja? And then they just kind of like surprised at seeing ninja in front of them. And that's where the episode ends. Chris, what do you think about this back half? This back half kind of does something kind of weird.
I mean, now, normally, it's already a red flag for a woman that has a lot of secrets, or anybody that has a lot of secrets. So, and I understand that a person will slowly tell you secrets as you get to know them in the long term.
Correct.
But somebody who tells you two big secrets and you just met them, that's a big red flag in my book.
Correct.
And then you lied to me once. Shame on me. Okay, so I'm trying to see if we get a second lie in here somewhere. And then the fact that you actually have an actual ninja come out of nowhere, like it's like time out, lady. Like as far as this character goes, like it seems like they're trying to jump it into a scene. However, we don't know how this ties in, or if anything is going to tie into the other character that they just introduced.
Correct. So, what I'm gonna say for me, I think this back half tie. So the back half is supposed to tie with the last thing we saw in the last episode, where we see the girl on the train coming into the city. That's true. She did run away from her family. She just didn't. She said she was on vacation to not give that away. Secondly, the fact of the matter is, if she's from a village where she's not used to all this stuff, then that kind of makes sense. More secluded, more something like that. The one thing Chris brought up very quickly that I didn't notice, when she told the truth, her voice changed. It had a more country accent to it, which I didn't notice until you mentioned it, Chris. So, what is this all about? Why is she coming to see Shy, which you said in the last episode? But also, why is she running away from her family? Does she not want to be a shinobi? Does she not want to be in it? What is it all this about? I'm intrigued to see what sort of goes. The thing that's connecting to this, and there's two connection threads, one big connecting thread. The fact that Shy helped the girl get the Book of the Blood, but also Shy's helped this girl learn about Japan and their world, but also is going to keep her secret probably. I'm assuming the girl knows something about Shy's powers, but we'll find it out later down the road. I'm going to ask this, Chris, with the context. What would you give Shy episode 14 for a rating? And before you give the answer, get up judging people. Episode 1, we're about to get into that.
Okay, bro. So this episode wasn't as eventful as episode 1, but they did try to dive into the story.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm going to give this episode a solid 6.
Okay, explain.
I still want to see. I'm trying to get back to the feeling that this gave me in the first season. Like, why is she a true hero? And then I need to see why this show sets apart from My Hero Academia. Because right now, y'all looking real similar-ish right now.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm going to give it a 6.
This one's tough to me. because I want to give this. I want to be fair to it, and I think being fair, I would give this like a 7, just because you're giving us a little bit of mystery with this new character coming in from AI, the Shinobi stuff, the ninja stuff. I think they're going to tie into what's going on with the villains, but ultimately, outside of that, like Chris said, it has a lot of My Hero Academia vibes to it. I think they're gonna make Shy. What's gonna help? I think what they do with Shy is the fact that she's good at helping people outside of her powers, but when she has her powers, it's hard to get out there and be personable and do interviews and all that stuff. I think that's gonna be the thing where the more she does outside of her powers, the better she is stronger with her powers. That's kind of where they want to tell. I think that's where they're going. But we'll see. I don't really know what to think. And that's just me. It's weird because we like season 1. Like season 1 was really good. And Chris brought it up. Season 1, right in the middle of season 1, was the point where it kind of changed. I think that's going to be the same thing here. Between 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, that's that point where it's going to change and it's going to click. What that is, I don't know. I think this is one of those ones that's slow, it's different, but it came back because it's got a good following. You see that in charts. It's 12. So we'll see what it does. Am I still intrigued? Yes, I'm still intrigued. I'm still interested where it goes. But it's kind of like just a barely intrigued, but not like a super intrigued. Let's go ahead and get into Dungeon People. Dungeon People is going to be interesting. I think this is one I think all three of us is going to like. Me, Dion, and Chris. Because I think this one has a little more story to it, a little more something substance. A lot of these shows, you have to be able to get into what they're trying to play at. That's the one thing about the summer season is kind of weird. These shows are not going to hold your hand like most shows will. They're actually letting you think on your own for the most part. But in a second, I will say 3, 2, 1, and then we'll get going. Chris, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. A person in the dungeon.
Yeah, if I saw something like that in real life, yeah, I would be amazed.
Yeah, absolutely. Wait, did she say 12 hours a day?
He said 10 hours a day, but he just said 12 more hours to go. I was like,
Oh,
what?
jeez. That would be insane if you're doing that for that long.
Yeah, he should literally be as strong as One Punch Man.
Yes, he could. I do like the fact that music is really cool for this and like the opening pictures,
Oh yeah,
the cinematic.
it is. It is kind of playful.
This kind of has that same vibe as Yokohama Family, by the way.
Yeah, seems childish at first.
Yeah.
That is the one misleading thing about most animes, bro.
What?
It aren't always the ages versus how they draw 'em.
Oh yeah.
Like my favorite little news video was that one game that people was saying that most women were mad at it because it showed unrealistic proportions, and then the guy
Oh
showed off
yeah.
his wife, and that was actually how his wife looked.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, all of y'all be mad. All of y'all be mad.
So her dad said she was thief class.
Yep.
Even though my father wasn't a great teacher, he did taught me. He did teach me well. What she's kind of saying.
Pretty much.
Oh, so he went down it. That was the thing. When she said that line, I was like, did he go down in this dungeon?
That's the one thing that hasn't made sense yet.
Did he go down here and start fighting and then he just disappeared? This must be her thief skill. Goblins, buff goblins. That's a line.
That was a nice cut there.
Yeah, that was.
Ooh.
I love the fact when she instantly opened the door and instantly aggroed her. It didn't wait around.
Not at all. That's what I would expect from a real boss monster.
Correct.
In a way, this is like the veil being lifted.
Yes, it's breaking that immersion. So you're breaking that fourth wall of like, oh wait, these things can actually talk.
Mm-hmm.
And wait, we were just having a battle, but you told me to stop fighting you. By the way, how can she understand what he's saying?
That's what she said. Like all of a sudden he's speaking.
Yeah, and it's English. It's elegant English. So that dagger can paralyze. That's basically what they're telling.
Mm-hmm. She carries 3 daggers with her.
Is it 3 or 2? I can't tell.
3.
So I'm wondering if the one of them is her dad's.
His looks different.
Okay, they're not as big. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of see in that frame she had 3.
Yeah, you can see 3 now. Guy can see the one behind that other one.
Mm-hmm.
She already knew about it. You talked to her. He's going boo. Try to get away from that. Yep. Yep. She called it out. A
It
little long pause.
really was.
So this must be not her room. This must be the boss's room.
It's really hard to tell, especially after seeing that scene.
Yeah.
But there is a giveaway.
They're diner seating. That's kind of cool. I like that. Chris, when she said I've been asking for more help for a while now, I'm wondering if she's had this conversation with multiple adventurers.
Good question. I wonder if her father is one of them.
Correct. There's the other thing I get out of that.
Young Brandon,
Hmm.
in current times, modern times, would you take this job?
Probably only because she's not doing it out of like malice. She just wants the help.
But I mean, if this was an actual occupation, though.
Oh yeah, I probably could do it. It wouldn't be that hard. It seemed like
Seems like it.
it basically like managing people and just helping with their problems. So
Mm.
by the way, a weird boss room. I will say that.
Like an infinite void.
Yeah, unencumbered. So she assumes her father is dead,
Well, she assumes her father would have made it at least at least to her.
and then died. If that was okay. By the way, she did that without any without hesitation or incantation. She just does it. It's like, okay. Yeah. By the way, why you say morning? You don't have a sense of time.
And look, that's the idea that they're in her room because she says she repaired the wall right there.
Correct.
But that's what threw me off again when she said they're on the 11th floor.
Yeah, because they originally went down the 8th floor.
Yep.
Okay, that's the numbers don't matter then. That's fair.
Hmm.
Or she might have multiple rooms in the dungeon.
Still though.
Operations. Yep. A dungeon operations. He's like, interview interviewing monsters. Which is from the Demon World. Yep.
Nope.
Nope.
She can handle
She
that here.
I love how they said the person started the Thief Guild.
What if her father was the original administrator?
That is one I could see. I could see that. So that was the end of Dungeon People episode 1, A Person in the Dungeon. Chris, I'm gonna let you do the honors for this one. You can do however you want, however you want to review it, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. So let me break this down real quick. So in the beginning, we see the girl training with her father at a young age. And I mean, the stuff he's telling her is pretty intense. Like, you got to climb to the top of a mountain in 10 seconds. You got to jump to the top of a tree in 1 second. You got to be able to do this. You got to be able to do that. It's like, okay. So she had intensive training as a child. Now, 3 years later, now her father just appeared into the dungeon. She's training in the dungeon, going down in there, and she's doing hell, like for real. Like by the time we see her, she's already on the 7th floor, and she's destroying some kind of hellhound looking thing. And I mean, she does the quick maneuver, slices it up, gets the stone, okay, and then like it's from this point, it seems like it's a regular anime. She gets to the well, regular dungeon. She gets to the eighth floor, sees some bigger than average goblins, still takes them down with ease. And then we get the little story about the stones and everything. That's pretty much okay. Who doesn't know about stones in a dungeon? See, from this point on, it looks like a dungeon. Then she gets to what looks like a floor boss, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking that's kind of quick to get to the floor boss that way. But hey,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay. So let me stop here because this is like the halfway. This is like the halfway point.
I will
So
explain
tell me what
something.
you think.
I will explain something with the floor boss and the fact she even thought she's like when she goes like does her little sense thing with her magic. She's like, "There's no other monsters around. Seems like it's pretty quiet. I can't feel the monster's aura, but there's something behind that door." So even she was skeptical. The other part about it was the interesting thing of that she was like, "I've never seen buff goblins before," but at a certain point, when you get certain levels, they work in packs, so they work as a team, which is a not surprising thing. It I like the way they started this out like a normal isekai, like a normal just like dungeon crawler. They're like, this is a normal dungeon crawler, nothing's out of the ordinary. Here you go. I love that start out, and then this is where it flips like that. I appreciate this first part, this first half. Go ahead and do the second half.
Okay, so in this second half, as she's facing this floor boss, she's kind of realizing like this dude is hard. Like his skin is hard. He's got armor plating. Can't even cut him on his feet. And then after he throws his axe, she's like, dang, he's even faster barehanded. But I mean, she's still dodging though. So and
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden the wall breaks. Now, Brandon, this has a lot of indie windows that can go with this. When I said this is like a version of the veil lifting, and
Yes.
this is like that the the movie where they said the sky is falling, the
Yep.
one where the Truman show where he's in it and the set falls. Like this is that kind of opening to the show. Okay, and so as we get to this opening, uh, the floor starts talking to her, and he's all worried, like, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen." Oh my God, he's all frantic and everything to the fact that he starts talking, and then he says, "Hey, like, let's pause for a minute, because here comes the administrator." The administrator comes, is this little tiny little girl, and it's like, "What?" And but yet she's throwing off this immense power on her, and it's like, oh, okay. But it takes on the slice of life part, and she pulls her back in, and she sees a hall full of all these doors, and it's like, oh, okay, what are we really looking at? And then they take her to a lounge and sit her down. It's like, hey, why don't you work in the dungeon? It's like, now now there is no other way you can phrase that sounds good about it. Because when you hear dungeon, you thinking torture, chains, smelly people locked up. That's. Well, I digress. This is an anime dungeon. Da da da. So she takes out this contract and she's reading it, and she's like, "Wait a minute. If you're the she started putting the pieces together. He's like, well, if you're their manager, does that also make you the last boss? She's like, yep. Well, then she pretty much tells you, well, I'm fight me. And if you win, I'll work. If not, oh well, tough luck. So the floor admin agrees, takes her to her floor, and then the battle commences. And as they begin this battle, she's talking, wondering like, hey, if my dad should at least made it to this point, like, and if she, let's see if she's as strong to take him down. So as they're fighting, she dodges, blocks everything with her staff. And the staff is like literally twice her size. So yeah, she's really blocking all her. Then finally, when girl gets a good stab in her clothes, she jumps back and then fires off this monumental class triple S spell at her. Like it looks unavoidable, honestly. And then they wake back up in the lounge, in the bed, back in her room where she's fixed the wall. Hands her the contract. She reads over it, starts asking questions, and yeah, this is how we get to our anime.
I will say this: the way they subverted the fact that this is normal dungeon. She's going through it, and the way they subverted the fact, like, to made you feel like, oh, they're not gonna do anything weird. Once the wall breaks with the guy, you knew something was up, and you knew something was different. The fact she even says the monster is speaking so elegantly. How can I understand what he's saying? The fact she mentions that door is having an aura, like you said, the aura of that door is insane, and the monster points at it. The fact of the matter is, they go up to talk on the eighth floor in the first little room. When after the fight, they come back and talk. We're on the 11th floor. We're in her room, and then the small details like, oh, I would just sit outside. I don't need a room. I was like, no, I can don't. I would not want you to do that. We're gonna get your room and everything. And it's just like, she's like, how can I do this? I'm still part of the thief guild. I know the person who's in the thief guild. Everything will be taken care of. Don't worry about it. Which I think you're spot on. I think the thief guild is her dad's running the thief guild now. Either he runs a thief guild or he helped manage the dungeon prior. One or the other. I like the way the story is going. I like the fact that something's not overly complex, but simple enough, but it also gives you things to think about. So I think she'll work in the dungeon, learn more about the dungeon, learn about the people in the dungeon, because we see some things in the opening the opening cinematic that shows you more people in the dungeon than just her. Even the doors kind of give you an indication. Like one of the doors had a potion symbol above it. One of the other doors had something else above it. I forget what the other thing I saw above one of the other doors. But like, it's going to be very interesting to do what they can do with this story. Also, the fact that she said my job basically entails fixing traps, helping the monsters, but also hiring new monsters as well. Um, yeah, I can't say enough about this. It's actually pretty good. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I'm gonna let Chris do these because this is one we all kind of picked, but I think this one he would enjoy kind of following. Um, Chris, what would you give Dungeon People Episode 1 for a rating?
All right, I'm gonna break this down in three simple things. A few categories.
Mm-hmm.
So this first category goes for originality of story. I'm going to give it a solid B plus.
Okay.
Okay, animation and drawing. I'm going to give it a C minus because it looks a little childish, but it has a good story.
Okay.
Okay, and probably so. My last one is going to be storytelling. I'm going to give it a solid A.
Okay.
So with these things in mind, I'm going to give this episode a 7.5.
Okay. Okay. That kind of works out because we look at, for me, I would say, based on how you rated it, I think the the storytelling is a B plus. I think the visuals are actually a B minus. I actually think the visuals are really good. I will say it's more childish and old school, but it reminds me of old school dungeon crawler or like an old school um like dungeon adventure game, because I think that's what they're trying to go for. Um, but then I think I agree with you on the last one. The last one's like an A, absolutely. I would have to give this like an 8.5. I think that's where I would put this. I think it's a pretty good one. And I think this story is interesting enough where they can keep the story interesting with new characters and kind of figure out what you're going to be doing in this dungeon and all that kind of stuff. It works out perfectly. This is probably gonna be one of the sleeper hits. I think it's not gonna do well at first, but I think once the story kind of kicks in, I think it's gonna do a lot better. But that was episode 63 of the Anime Dojo. We'll be back next week for episode 64. We're gonna be doing Shy episode 15 and Dungeon People episode 2. And we're also talking about some other news and things that are be coming out. By this point, we're gonna be pretty much getting stuck into the summer season, and I think the news will kind of slow up for a bit for the most part because we've kind of got a big news section this last week with Anime Expo. It'll slow up for a bit, but we'll have some smaller news things. But this will go up on Spotify after it processes, and it'll be up on YouTube on Thursday. I do thank Chris for joining me. I do thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and hope you're here for next time. See you.
Deuce.